I used to believe endings happened cleanly, like in the movies when the heroine slams the door, tosses the ring, and never looks back. But real-life endings are slower, messier, and sometimes they don't even end at all. When I first met Ryan Keller, he seemed like the kind of guy who belonged on the cover of a fitness magazine. Perfect teeth, easy smile, and that type of confidence that made you think he had everything figured out. We met at the gym in Buffalo, New York. I was 26 back then, just starting my career as a veterinary nurse. I didn't have time for much, long shifts, late nights at the clinic. But Ryan noticed me, and for a girl who'd spent most of her life blending into the background, that meant something. "Hey, you're the girl who always reads on the treadmill," he said one evening, flashing me that smile. I laughed, embarrassed. "It keeps me from watching the clock." That was how it started. A comment, a smile, and before I knew it, he was offering me rides home, taking me out for late-night pizza, texting me good morning before my alarm even went off. He made me feel chosen, and I mistook that for love. For a while, things were good. He was funny, affectionate, even a little protective. But over time, that protection started to feel more like possession. "You're late again," he'd mutter when I got home after an emergency surgery. "It was a dog hit by a car, Ryan. What did you want me to do, just leave?" "You put animals before me," he snapped. "Always have." I brushed it off. Relationships take compromise, I told myself. But the cracks deepened. He got jealous when I laughed too long at a coworker's joke. He accused me of flirting when I wore scrubs that weren't baggy. The final straw came one night over cheap takeout, when he admitted, without shame, that he'd hooked up with a babysitter from his sister's neighborhood. He said it with a shrug, like it wasn't betrayal, just a slip. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just packed his clothes into trash bags, set them by his car, and told him we were done. He didn't argue. Not at first. He just stood there, eyes dark, lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. "You'll see I'm the only one who actually cares about you." I didn't answer. I closed the door, leaned against it, and felt the relief wash over me. Within a week, I signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment on Hudson Street. It was small, the paint was peeling, and the faucet dripped no matter how hard I twisted the handle, but it allowed pets. I brought my Labrador, Cooper, and my 2 cats, Milo and Pumpkin. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt free. But freedom has a way of showing its cracks too. The animals noticed first. Cooper growled at corners where nothing stood. Milo scratched at the closet door at night, yowling until I let him out. Pumpkin sat in the front window, hissing at shadows. I told myself they were adjusting, that pets felt stress just like people did. But by the 3rd week, I started to understand. They weren't reacting to the apartment. They were reacting to him. And Ryan wasn't done with me. It started small. So small I almost convinced myself it wasn't happening. One night, I came home from work to find my apartment door unlocked. I froze in the hallway, my pulse hammering in my ears. Had I forgotten to lock it? Inside, nothing was missing. Not my laptop, not the TV, but on my pillow sat Milo's toy mouse, the one he carried everywhere. Only I hadn't left it there. A chill ran through me. The next evening, my Wi-Fi router kept shutting down. When it finally restarted, I checked the available networks on my phone. There, beneath the neighbor's Smith family Wi-Fi and Netgear 93, was a new one. Jess loves RK. I sat on the couch, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. It couldn't be him, I told myself. It had to be a coincidence. Someone in the building messing around, but deep down, I knew better. Ryan was clever with technology. He liked control. He would have thought this was funny. The worst was Cooper. Around 2 a.m. every night he would leap off the bed, barking furiously at the closet. I'd flick on the lights, my heart racing, and he wouldn't stop until I opened the door and showed him nothing was there. Afterward, he'd sit by my side, whining softly, as if he wanted to tell me something I couldn't understand. I was exhausted. Coffee kept me alive at work, but I could see the toll. My best friend, Hannah, cornered me one afternoon. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, handing me a latte. "Thanks," I muttered. "Jess, seriously, what's going on?" I hesitated. Telling her felt like making it real. I think Ryan might be messing with me." Her face hardened. "Change your locks." I already did. Twice. "Then call the cops." I shrugged. "And tell them what? That my cat's toy moved?" Hannah leaned closer, her voice low. "Jess, listen to me. Guys like him don't just stop. You need to take this seriously." I promised I would, but promises are easy. Following through is harder. The next sign came on a Friday night. I dragged myself home after a double shift, unlocked my apartment, and froze. The TV was on. Muted, playing a slideshow of my photos. Selfies, vacation shots, even pictures I had never posted online. On the couch sat a small box with a red bow. My stomach dropped. Inside was a phone. The screen lit up instantly. "Ryan, I told you I'd always be close. Miss me?" I screamed, dropped it on the carpet, and called Hannah in a panic. By the time she arrived, the TV was off, the box was gone, and everything looked normal. She searched the apartment, checking every closet, every corner. Nothing. "Jess," she said finally, gripping my shoulders. "He's playing with your head. But we're going to get through this. Okay?" I nodded, but my insides were shaking. Because in my heart, I knew she was wrong. This wasn't just in my head. Ryan was here. Fear makes you second-guess yourself. It makes you wonder if you're losing your mind. That's what Ryan wanted. But then finally, I got proof. I bought a cheap security camera online, the kind you hook up to an app. I set it up in my living room, right where it could see the door and the couch. The first 2 nights, nothing. Just the cats chasing each other and Cooper pacing in his sleep. But on the 3rd morning, I opened the app and nearly dropped my phone. The timestamp read 3:14 a.m. The footage showed Ryan walking in. Calm, confident, using a spare key I didn't know he'd copied. He crouched down, whispering to Cooper. My dog wagged his tail uncertainly, whining. Ryan reached out, scratched behind his ears, then picked up Milo. He kissed my cat on the head like nothing was wrong. And then he looked at the camera, directly. He smiled, winked. Then he stood, peeled a piece of tape from his pocket, and covered the lens. I was shaking so hard I could barely breathe. I called Hannah, words tumbling out. She drove me straight to the police station. They watched the footage, nodding, serious faces. But when I asked what they could do, the officers sighed. "We'll add this to your report. Unless he threatens you physically or breaks in while you're home, it's tough to press charges." I wanted to scream. He had broken in. He had filmed me. Wasn't that enough? That night I stayed at Hannah's. I couldn't face the apartment, but I had to go back for my animals. When we returned the next day, the tape was gone from the camera. The place looked untouched, like nothing had happened. And Ryan's number? Disconnected. It was like he'd vanished. But he hadn't. He was circling, waiting. I felt it in my bones. 2 days later, I was leaving work when one of the receptionists smiled at me. "Your boyfriend was here earlier," she said casually. "Said he was picking you up." My stomach turned to ice. "I walked today," I whispered. Outside at the bus stop sat Ryan's old Ford truck, engine running. He grinned through the window, tapping the steering wheel. "Jess!" he shouted as I bolted across the parking lot toward Hannah's car. "Jess, don't embarrass me like this." Hannah slammed the locks down as I scrambled inside. My hands were shaking too hard to fasten the seatbelt. "Go!" I begged. The final straw came in June. I came home from the grocery store juggling bags and saw it. A bouquet of roses on my doorstep, tied with a note. "I still have your house key. Want me to prove it? R." My chest tightened. I opened the door and gasped. Every single photo frame in the apartment had been replaced. My family pictures, vacation shots, even my clinic group photo, all replaced with pictures of me. sleeping, some from close up, some from strange angles, some from weeks ago. I dropped the groceries, scooped up Cooper and the cats, and ran. That night, I filed an emergency restraining order. When police searched the apartment, they found 3 hidden cameras. One in my bedroom vent, another in the smoke detector, and one in the bathroom light fixture. That was the breaking point. Ryan was arrested 2 weeks later. Not for me, but because he was caught breaking into another ex-girlfriend's place in Rochester. Same tactics, same sick games, but the damage was already done. I never went back to Hudson Street. Hannah helped me pack what little I could stomach to keep. The rest I left behind. I moved to Cleveland, started fresh, brought Cooper and the cats with me, changed my number, changed my locks, changed my social media names. I thought that was the end. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm scrolling through Instagram, a private account requests to follow me. No profile picture, no posts, just the username. Still RK. I block it every time. But the knot in my stomach never really goes away. Obsession isn't love. Control isn't care. Real relationships don't grow from fear or possession. They grow from trust and respect. If someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And if you ever feel unsafe, don't wait for proof to act. Because sometimes survival isn't about being strong. It's about listening to the fear that's trying to save you. I was 36 when Angela, my wife, was killed by a drunk driver. 6 years of marriage gone in a split second on a rainy night in March. I remember the phone call, the way the deputy's voice cracked as he tried to explain, the sound that came out of my throat when I dropped the phone. It didn't sound like me. It sounded like an animal. For a long time after, I lived like a ghost. Work, home, frozen dinners, scrolling through the same set of photos of Angela on my phone every night. Fishing trips, Christmas mornings, her laugh frozen in pixels. I couldn't bring myself to delete them, but sometimes I couldn't bear to look either. Friends tried to set me up. Neighbors dropped off casseroles. My sister, Ellen, checked in weekly. But I brushed them all off. I wasn't angry, just hollow. By 2017, 6 years later, Ellen finally cornered me at her kitchen table. "Mark," she said, pushing a cup of coffee toward me, "Angela wouldn't want you spending the rest of your life alone. You're only 42. You're not dead." I tried to joke it off. "Feels like it most days." Her eyes softened. "At least try. Put yourself out there. You don't have to marry anyone tomorrow. Just live a little." That night, alone in my house with the hum of the refrigerator for company, I sat down at my computer. I stared at the screen for nearly half an hour before typing in the words, "dating sites near me." That's how I found Heartlink. It wasn't slick like the apps today, just profiles, a few grainy photos, and messages that looked like emails. With shaking hands, I created a profile. I kept it simple. A few pictures from fishing trips, one in front of my old Ford truck, and the truth. I was a widower. For weeks it was dead ends, matches that fizzled, awkward conversations that stopped mid-sentence. Until one night, a message popped up, from Sophie Lane. "Your smile seems genuine. That's rare." I stared at it for a long time before I replied. Sophie's profile picture showed a brunette in her late 30s, smiling with a golden retriever at her side. Her bio was short. Loved books, loved hiking, worked in retail. But her messages were warm, real. She asked about Angela, and when I finally told her the story, she wrote back, "Grief never really leaves us. I had a broken engagement once. Different kind of loss, but I know the ache." It felt like she understood in a way no one else had. We talked about everything, awkward customers at work, our favorite movies, old family recipes. I told her about the time Angela burned Thanksgiving dinner by forgetting to defrost the turkey. She told me about her grandmother's lasagna recipe she could never quite get right. For the first time in years, I felt alive. 3 weeks passed in a blur of messages. I'd rush home from work, microwave a frozen dinner, and sit at my computer like a teenager waiting for her name to pop up. Finally, I typed, "Would you like to meet in person? No pressure." Her reply came quick. "Yes, but let's keep it simple. Small bar, not too crowded. Saturday night?" We settled on Benson's Tavern, a place with wood-paneled walls, sticky floors, and the kind of bartenders who remembered your order after 2 visits. I hadn't been there in years, but it felt safe. Neutral. Saturday came. I put on my best button-up, shaved carefully, even dabbed on cologne I hadn't touched since Angela died. My hands shook the whole drive over. I got there early, ordered a soda to calm my nerves, and waited. That's when the bartender, Emily, leaned over. She was a college kid, maybe 20, with a nose ring and a quick smile. "Waiting on a date?" she asked. I laughed nervously. "Yeah, first one in a long time." I pulled out my phone and showed her Sophie's picture. Her smile faltered. She leaned back, whispered something to a guy at the end of the bar, then came closer again, her voice low. "Sir, I think you should know. That woman isn't who you think." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Emily glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. "We've seen him before. A guy, middle-aged. He uses fake profiles, different names, different photos, matches with women, sometimes men. He sets up meetings here. Last time, cops had to be called." Her words sank into me like ice water. "You're saying Sophie isn't real?" She nodded slowly. "I'm saying be careful." My stomach turned. Weeks of late-night conversations, confessions about Angela, all those moments I thought were real. It couldn't have been fake. Could it? Just then, my phone buzzed. Sophie. "Parking now. Be inside in 2 mins." Emily's hand shot out, squeezing my wrist. "Don't leave. My dad owns this bar. I've already called the police." The whole room seemed to hold its breath. A minute later, the door creaked open. It wasn't Sophie. It was a man. Tall, stocky, mid-40s, baseball cap pulled low. He scanned the room, and then his eyes landed on me. And I recognized him. Kevin Walsh. My chest went cold. Angela's ex-boyfriend. Angela had told me about Kevin years earlier, before we married. Controlling, manipulative, wouldn't take no for an answer. She broke it off, and he didn't take it well. He called her for months, showed up at her work once, left notes on her windshield. Eventually he faded away, or so I thought. Now here he was, standing in Benson's Tavern, smirking like the devil. "Mark," he drawled, starting toward me. "Damn, you got old." I stood up, backing away instinctively. My legs felt like cement. Emily's dad and 2 truckers stepped between us. One of them muttered, "Not tonight, pal." Kevin's smirk twitched. He looked around the bar, probably realizing half the eyes in the place were on him. Outside, sirens wailed. Kevin's face hardened. He bolted for the door, but deputies tackled him in the parking lot. I sank back onto my stool, hands trembling. Emily slid me a glass of water. "You okay?" she whispered. I nodded, but the truth was, I wasn't, not even close. The aftermath was worse than the confrontation. Police searched Kevin's laptop. They found multiple fake female profiles, Heartlink, other apps, even Facebook. He'd been catfishing widows, divorcees, single moms, even young women barely out of high school. Sometimes he humiliated them, sometimes he stalked them, sometimes worse. When I asked an officer why he targeted me specifically, he showed me chat logs. Kevin had known who I was the entire time. Every sweet message, every line about grief, every false detail about lasagna recipes, carefully written by him. He wanted me to trust him, to open up, to relive my pain so he could twist the knife. His last message, sent right before his arrest, was printed in black and white. "Angela chose you over me once. This time I win." Kevin pled down to online harassment and fraud. Served 18 months, he's out now. I deleted every dating app, moved across the state, kept to myself. But sometimes, when I check my spam folder, I see an email that makes my blood run cold. Last week it read, "Miss you, Mark. S. Loneliness can make us vulnerable. When you're aching for connection, you can ignore the little things that don't add up." I wanted so badly to believe Sophie was real that I missed the signs. The truth is, predators feed on hope. They prey on people searching for comfort, for love, for belonging. Be careful with your trust. Protect your heart as fiercely as you would your home. And remember, real love doesn't hide behind masks, false names, or manipulations. Real love doesn't exploit your wounds. I never liked office parties. At 31, I was a mid-level project manager at a marketing firm in Chicago, and the thought of mingling with coworkers while pretending to enjoy lukewarm cocktails and awkward small talk didn't appeal to me. I'd spent most of my adult life learning to blend into the background, to smile politely while keeping my distance. My personal life wasn't much better. I'd broken up with my college girlfriend Anna 2 years earlier after she admitted she had fallen for someone else. Since then, my nights were mostly Netflix and takeout, punctuated by brief, forgettable dating app encounters. That December, my boss announced that attendance at the holiday banquet at the downtown Hyatt ballroom was mandatory. I groaned when I read the email. Mandatory fun, I muttered to myself, rolling my eyes. The banquet itself was everything I hated. Fluorescent lights bouncing off polished floors, bland instrumental music, and colleagues in stiff suits and dresses trying too hard to be witty. I stayed close to the buffet table, nursing a glass of white wine, hoping to make it through without someone pulling me into karaoke or forced games. And then I saw her, Clara Donovan. She wasn't part of the company. She was a guest of our new HR rep. She stood apart near the bar, wearing a maroon dress that hugged her in all the right places without being showy. Her dark hair curled over her shoulders, and she moved with effortless grace while the rest of us shuffled in place. There was something magnetic about the way she leaned against the railing, sipping her drink, eyes scanning the room but seeming detached, almost bored. Fueled by liquid courage, I grabbed 2 glasses of wine and approached her on the balcony. My hands shook slightly, not from nerves about talking to a stranger, but from the sudden realization that I wanted to talk to her. She turned and her eyes met mine. She smiled like she'd been waiting for me all night. Finally, someone who looks as miserable as I feel. I laughed, and the sound surprised me. That laugh carried away years of loneliness in an instant. We started talking about books, travel, childhood memories, things no one in my office had ever cared to ask. She asked me questions that made me pause and think, not the usual small talk. What did you love most when you were 12? What's your biggest regret? She listened as if my answers mattered, as if she genuinely wanted to know the truth about me. When the party ended, we walked outside into the cold Chicago night. She brushed snow from my coat sleeve and said softly, "This was the best part of the whole night." For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a cruel joke. I felt alive again. The next few weeks were a blur. I wasn't sure if it was the magic of winter, the effect of finally feeling seen, or just that Clara had a way of making everything feel cinematic. Our first official date was at a jazz bar downtown. She closed her eyes during the music, swaying gently, lost in the rhythm. It felt intimate, like the world had shrunk to just the two of us. We cooked together in her small apartment one night. I burned the garlic, and she laughed, really laughed, and I found myself wanting to make her laugh even more. Texts became late-night confessions. She told me she had been lonely, craving something real and deep, not the casual flings that seem to dominate modern dating. I told my sister about her, my parents too. Everyone said the same thing. I was smiling again. I thought I'd found someone who matched my energy, someone who could share both my quirks and my quiet moments. By the second month, Clara was practically living at my apartment. Her sketchbooks were stacked on my coffee table. Her scarf hung casually over my chair. I didn't mind. I liked her presence, the way she filled the apartment with her energy. But then came the first argument. It was small, stupid even. I mentioned grabbing lunch with a female coworker. Clara's expression changed instantly, her lips pressing into a thin line. "So you take other women out now?" I tried to laugh it off. "It's just lunch, not a date." "Do you think she's prettier than me?" No answer could calm her. That night ended with her sitting on my living room floor, tears streaming, whispering, "Every man leaves me. Promise you won't." I promised. I wish I hadn't. The jealousy didn't stay contained, it spread like poison. If I stayed late at work, she demanded proof. Screenshots, video calls. She was convinced my best friend, Kara, had designs on me and began sending her messages. "Stay away from my man or you'll regret it." Kara showed me the texts. Her warning was blunt. "This woman isn't stable. Please be careful." I thought I could manage it. I told myself love meant patience, understanding. But every boundary I tried to maintain seemed like a threat to her. Clara began rearranging my life. She said my job was beneath me, suggested I quit and freelance so we could create together. She replaced my framed photos with her art, hung her candles, subtly changing my apartment to match her vision. She even discouraged me from visiting my parents, claiming they didn't understand her. Whenever I resisted, she threatened to leave, or worse. Once, she leaned in close, voice calm but terrifying. "If you ever tried to walk away, I'd make sure no one else could ever have you." Her tone was flat, cold. I laughed nervously, but the chill stayed with me. Spring came, and with it, the unraveling. At a rooftop office mixer, Clara insisted on tagging along. She scanned the crowd, her eyes flicking to every woman who spoke to me. When a coworker, Melissa, complimented my tie, Clara leaned in close and whispered, "She wants you. Don't deny it." Later, in front of everyone, she spilled red wine on Melissa's white blouse. She smiled like it was an accident. That night, I told her it was over. Her reaction was chilling. She stared at me for a long moment, then laughed, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can end this? You're mine. I'll never let you go." The days after the breakup were hell. She texted from dozens of numbers, begged, threatened. She left wilting flowers at my door with notes that read, "You'll come back." At 3 a.m., scratching at my door became routine. Once, when I looked through the peephole, she was there, holding a knife, smiling. Police said unless she physically harmed me, there was little they could do. I felt trapped, my life invaded, my sanity eroded. One night, I returned home to find my apartment unlocked. Everything looked normal, except on my bed lay a sketch of me sleeping. The folds of the blanket, the position of my arm. It was horrifyingly accurate. She had been inside, watching me. I moved cities, changed my number, blocked every social media account she could use. It was supposed to end there. 3 years later, I was in a cafe in Denver, drinking a latte, and trying to enjoy a rare, quiet morning. I felt it before I saw it, the weight of eyes on me. When I looked up, a woman in a maroon coat was slipping out the door. On the table, a folded napkin remained. I unfolded it. Inside, 4 words. "First dates never end." The shadow of her obsession still lingers, and I know somewhere she is waiting for the right moment. True love respects boundaries, obsession does not. Pay attention to early warning signs of control, jealousy, and manipulation. Protect your space, your mind, and your life. Love should make you feel free, not trapped. Recognizing toxicity early can save years of fear and emotional damage. I've always thought of Vancouver as a city wrapped in fog. From my apartment window, the harbor often disappears into gray mist. The streets glisten with rain, and headlights blur into streaks of white. Life here moves quietly, Commuters with umbrellas, joggers in neon jackets, children clutching backpacks. For years, I thought I'd built my own little corner of that calm, a steady job as a financial analyst, a wife who ran a popular lifestyle blog, and our daughter Sophie, who turned 7 last spring. On the surface, things looked perfect. We had routines, rituals, the kind of life I once thought insulated us from chaos. Saturday mornings meant pancakes in the kitchen, Jenna posting photos of our brunch to her thousands of followers. Weeknights ended with Netflix shows. Sophie curled between us with her stuffed toy. Family portraits on the mantle told the story of stability, and for a long time I believed it. But cracks in a marriage don't appear overnight. They creep in like shadows lengthening across the floor. At first I noticed small things. Jenna dressing up more than usual before heading out for meetings, her phone lighting up late at night and disappearing under her hand when I walked into the room. She brushed it off with a laugh. "Relax, Michael," she'd say, flashing me that perfect smile she used on her followers. "It's just work. I'm networking." I wanted to believe her. I told myself she was ambitious, that her brand depended on constant interaction. But deep down, I knew the difference between someone chasing opportunity and someone chasing attention. I started noticing silences. The way she slipped outside for phone calls during dinner. The new perfume lingering on her coat when she came home past midnight. The way she avoided my eyes when I asked, "Did you have a good night?" She used to chatter endlessly about her day. Brands reaching out, friends she'd met for coffee. But her stories grew shorter, vaguer, until whole evenings passed without her speaking more than a few sentences to me. Our laughter faded. Our bed felt colder. One rainy Thursday, I came home early from the office. My umbrella dripped onto the carpet as I kicked off my shoes. The apartment smelled faintly of vanilla candles, Jenna's favorite. Her laptop sat open on the counter, screen glowing. I didn't mean to pry, but the message popped up before I could look away. "Can't wait to see you tonight." The emoji cut through me like glass. It wasn't the kind of message you send a client. My chest tightened, pulse hammering in my ears. For a second I thought I might throw the laptop against the wall, but I froze, staring at the words until they blurred. That night, I said nothing. Jenna breezed in later, humming softly, a faint blush on her cheeks. She kissed Sophie's forehead, tucked her into bed, then turned to me with casual ease. "You're quiet tonight. Long day?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I swallowed it, my throat dry. "Yeah, long day." That was the night the fog settled into my chest. The night I realized I didn't know my wife anymore. The thing about suspicion is that it consumes you in silence. You start cataloging moments, watching for slips, piecing together fragments like a detective no one asked you to be. I began noticing patterns. Jenna's networking dinners always happened on the same nights of the week, Tuesdays and Fridays, sometimes stretching past midnight. Rideshare receipts appeared in our joint inbox, trips to downtown towers I'd never heard her mention. Flowers arrived once, left on her desk with no card, their scent filling the apartment with sweetness I couldn't bear. One Sunday morning, Sophie tugged at my sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, holding her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy said she's meeting someone special tonight." My heart clenched. "What did she say, sweetheart?" "That she has to look pretty for him." I forced a smile. Maybe she meant a business meeting. But I knew better. The paranoia grew. I started leaving the office early under excuses of finishing work from home. I'd sit in my car near the apartment watching the entrance. Once, I followed her discreetly, staying a few cars behind. The rain fell hard, blurring the windshield. She stepped out of an Uber in front of a high-rise downtown, laughing as she slipped into the lobby with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, confident, hand resting on her back like he owned her. I sat there gripping the wheel, nails digging into my palms. She disappeared into the building, swallowed by golden light. I couldn't bring myself to follow. I just sat in the car until the rain stopped, until the city lights blurred through my tears. At home, she breezed in hours later, smelling of wine and perfume. She tossed her heels aside, sliding into bed without a word. I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, my chest heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. The next morning over coffee I tried. "Jenna, who's Oliver?" She paused mid-sip, her eyes flicking up to mine. Then she laughed softly, almost pitying. "Oliver? You're being paranoid, Michael. You really need to relax." The way she said it, dismissive, amused, lit a fire inside me. But I said nothing. Instead, I started keeping records, screenshots of her receipts, times she left, times she returned. A notebook hidden in my desk, pages filled with dates and details. I felt insane, like a conspiracy theorist piecing together nonsense. Yet every line I wrote confirmed the truth. My wife was living a life I wasn't part of. One night, I saw a car parked near Sophie's school pickup. Same car, same man inside, week after week. My stomach dropped. Was this Oliver? Was he watching us? The fog around me thickened. I couldn't tell anymore if I was protecting my family or losing my mind. I couldn't keep it inside any longer. The silence was eating me alive, and Sophie deserved better than a father unraveling in secret. It was a Friday evening, the rain tapping against the windows. Sophie was asleep, her soft breathing steady through the baby monitor. Jenna was in the living room scrolling through her phone, a glass of red wine at her side. I stood in the doorway, my hands trembling. "I know you're seeing someone else." She didn't look up. "Michael, not this again. I've seen the messages, the flowers, the dinners. I followed you. I saw you go into that condo downtown with him." Her eyes finally lifted, calm and cold. "And what? You think you can stop me?" The way she said it, flat, almost amused, made my chest ache. "Jenna, we have a daughter. How could you do this?" "I need more than this life," she said, her voice sharp. "More than routines and spreadsheets. You're trapped, Michael. I refuse to be." Before I could respond, I heard movement. A man stepped out from the hallway. Oliver. Taller than I'd imagined, broad-shouldered, confidence radiating off him like heat. He smirked. "Looks like the husband finally figured it out." My throat closed. He was in my house, my safe space. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking. He stepped closer. "Or what?" I grabbed the nearest thing, Sophie's stuffed rabbit from the couch, and held it like a shield, my voice breaking. "She's upstairs, my daughter is here, get out." For a tense moment, no one moved. Jenna's face was unreadable. Then Oliver laughed softly, stepping back. "You're pathetic." He brushed past me, leaving the apartment with a casual wave. The door slammed, echoing in the silence. I turned to Jenna, my heart pounding. "You let him into our home with Sophie here." Her expression was cold, detached. "You'll never understand. I need more than you." I realized then I'd already lost her. Jenna left 2 weeks later. No fight, no drawn-out goodbye. Just a suitcase by the door and a note that read, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Oliver picked her up in a sleek black car, and I stood at the window, Sophie's small hand in mine, watching her mother disappear into the fog. Sophie didn't understand. "When's Mommy coming back?" I forced a smile, my throat tight. "She needs some time away. But I'm here, always." Life without Jenna was quieter, lonelier, but also clearer. I kept routines alive for Sophie's sake. School drop-offs, bedtime stories, weekend pancakes. But every night, I checked the locks twice, scanned the streets for unfamiliar cars. Every creak in the apartment made me flinch. One evening, I found Sophie drawing at the kitchen table. She held up her picture, a house with 2 stick figures inside, me and her. Outside, a taller figure stood in the rain. "Who's that?" I asked gently. "Mommy's friend," she whispered. My chest tightened. Even at 7, she knew more than I wanted her to. Weeks turned into months. Jenna's social media flaunted her new life. Photos in a downtown penthouse, dinners with Oliver, her smile brighter than it ever was at home. She looked free. I looked broken. I stopped looking eventually. Stopped caring what she posted. My focus shifted to Sophie, to giving her the stability she deserved. But some nights, I still woke with a start, convinced I'd heard Oliver's laugh outside the window. Years later, the fog still lingers. Jenna never came back. Oliver faded from the public eye eventually, though whispers of him remained. Business ventures, new women, the kind of man who leaves wreckage behind without looking back. Sophie grew older, stronger. She stopped asking about her mother after a while, though sometimes I'd catch her staring out the window, eyes distant. As for me, I rebuilt. Slowly. I learned to cook better meals, to braid Sophie's hair, to celebrate small victories. But the scar remained. The knowledge that betrayal can walk into your home wearing the face of someone you loved. Every morning I check the locks before leaving. Every night I triple bolt the door. Not because I think Oliver will return, but because I know now how fragile safety really is. Trust, once broken, never fully heals. You learn to live with the cracks to build a life around them. And when the fog rolls in from the harbor, blurring the city lights, I remind myself, sometimes the greatest danger isn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. It's the person who promised to love you quietly opening the door to let the danger in. I used to believe that toxic relationships only happened to other people. The women you read about in news articles, or the cautionary tales your mom slips into conversation. I thought I was too smart, too independent, too careful to ever let someone like Ethan Blake into my life. But the truth is, you don't notice the red flags when you're blinded by the thrill of being wanted. It was July 2017, the middle of a sticky Chicago summer, when my best friend dragged me to a rooftop party in Fulton Market. I was 24, working as a junior PR assistant, and I felt like I was constantly drowning in adult life, bills, deadlines, the crushing loneliness of being new in the city. The rooftop was alive with music, neon lights bouncing off the skyline, and for once I let myself feel free. That's when I saw him. Ethan. Tall, athletic, with that easy grin that made you think you'd known him forever. He handed me a drink like he'd been waiting for me all night. "New here?" I asked, trying not to blush under his gaze. "From Seattle," he said. "Needed a fresh start. Messy breakup." We talked for hours. About nothing. About everything. And when the party ended, he walked me to my car. By the time I got home, he'd already texted me. "Tonight was the best I've had in years. You're different, Maddie. Don't disappear." The whirlwind began instantly. Good morning texts. Coffee dropped off at my office with little notes like, "To my favorite girl." Late night phone calls that stretched until sunrise. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. "You're the only one who gets me," he whispered one night, his arm wrapped around me like a lifeline. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. But the shine wore off quickly. He started with my clothes. "That skirt makes you look cheap, babe. Why not wear the blue dress I like?" Then it was my friends. "Lily's not good for you, she's jealous. You're too good for people like her." I brushed it off. Love makes you compromise, I told myself. But when my childhood friend Michael visited, things shifted. At the bar, Michael hugged me hello and Ethan's face darkened. "You think I'm stupid?" he hissed when we got home. "You think I didn't see the way he looked at you?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. 1, 2, 10. By the end of the hour, 37 texts poured in from Ethan, swinging between, "I love you, don't leave me," and, "If you ever talk to him again, I'll make sure you regret it." That night, I should have run, but I didn't. Instead, I told myself he was just passionate, just scared of losing me. I had no idea how far his fear would go. By September, Ethan had a copy of my apartment key. I never actually gave him one. I think he made it himself the day I let him borrow mine to grab groceries. One night I came home to find the furniture rearranged. My couch angled toward the window, books stacked neatly on the table. "Made it better," he said with a shrug, like it was his right. I laughed nervously, but a chill crept down my spine. He started picking me up from work unannounced, sitting outside my office for hours. "Just wanted to see you," he'd say, grinning. Sunday dinners with my parents stopped. "They don't care about you like I do," he told me. "They don't understand what we have." It was subtle, the way he pulled me away from everyone I loved. And once he had me isolated, the mask slipped. One night, after I refused to quit my job like he wanted, his face twisted. "You're ungrateful," he spat. When I pushed back, he slapped me. The sound rang in the air like a gunshot. I gasped, clutching my cheek, but he just laughed. "Relax, baby. You make me crazy. You don't want to make me crazier, right?" I cried myself to sleep that night, but in the morning, he brought me flowers, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'll never do it again." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But the threats came next. He showed me screenshots of old Facebook messages I'd sent in college talking about trying drugs. He pulled up a shaky video of me stealing a bottle of wine during freshman year. "What would your boss think if he saw this?" he said, smirking. I felt trapped. The invisible chains tightened every day until I could barely breathe. It all came to a head in November. I had started secretly planning to leave, packing small bags, squirreling away money, making excuses to be away from the apartment, but Ethan sensed it. One night there was a knock at the door. I peeked through the peephole and saw a delivery driver holding flowers. I opened it cautiously, and Ethan shoved inside, locking the door behind him. "If I can't have you," he said flatly, "nobody will." My blood ran cold. That's when he showed me the cameras, one hidden in my smoke detector, another behind the vent. "I've watched you sleep," he said, grinning. "I know everything you do when you're alone." I thought I might faint, but survival instincts kicked in. "Ethan, you're scaring me," I said softly. "Let me make you a drink. We'll talk. Calm down." He smirked. "This better not be poison, Maddie." I crushed the leftover painkillers from my wisdom teeth surgery, mixed them into a glass, and handed it over. He laughed as he gulped it down. Minutes later, he slumped onto the couch, unconscious. I called my brother in a panic. He arrived within 20 minutes, eyes wide when he saw Ethan sprawled out. Together, we dragged him into the alley and called 911 anonymously. When the police arrived, they arrested him for trespassing, stalking, and unlawful surveillance. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But my relief was short-lived. Ethan's lawyer was slick, too slick. By spring, he was out in under 6 months. When I heard the news, I packed everything I could fit into a U-Haul and drove across the country to Portland, Oregon. I changed my number, quit social media, got a new job, a new apartment. I rebuilt my life piece by piece, cautiously, like I was walking on broken glass. For years it worked. I went on hikes, made new friends, started baking bread like some cliché. I smiled again. I breathed again. But the shadows never really left. At night I double-checked the locks. I slept with a baseball bat beside the bed. Sometimes I swore I saw him in a crowd, only to blink and realize it was just a stranger. The fear became part of me. I told myself I was safe. Until 2023. It was a Tuesday evening. I had stayed late at work, walking home through the quiet Portland streets with my phone in hand. A notification buzzed. Instagram, a follow request. I froze. No profile picture, no posts, just the username. Forever Ethan, 17. My heart stopped. 6 years had passed since that humid night in Chicago when I first met him. 6 years since I'd looked into his magnetic grin and thought he might be the one. I blocked the account instantly. But the damage was done. My hands were shaking, my breath shallow. Because it meant one thing. He had found me again. And I knew deep down. Ethan Blake wasn't finished with me. Love is never about control. Possession isn't devotion. What begins with small criticisms, jealousies, and manipulations can grow into something dangerous, something that steals your freedom, your safety, and your sense of self. The lesson is simple. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Don't wait for the slap, the threat, or the hidden cameras to recognize abuse. Your life, your freedom, your peace are worth more than any promise of love. I've always thought Edinburgh in winter was a city built for secrets. The stone buildings stand like old guardians, and when the fog rolls in from the North Sea, you can barely see a few steps in front of you. Our townhouse sat on one of those narrow lanes where the lamps throw long shadows across the cobblestones. It was beautiful, historic, and to me, it always carried a strange kind of weight. I'm Eric Lawson, architect, perfectionist by training and by nature. My life had always been built on clean lines and certainty. Rachel, my wife, was the opposite. She was warmth, color, unpredictability, the curator of an art gallery who could light up a room just by walking into it. For 10 years, that contrast worked. I built the walls, she filled them with life. But something changed. It started small. Rachel began taking evening classes, photography, painting, even a short story workshop. She claimed she needed inspiration for her exhibits to stay connected to the pulse of creativity. I encouraged it at first. I thought it was good for her. But soon, she was gone more often than she was home. One night, I asked, "Did you stay late at the class again? You never tell me what you actually do." She smiled without meeting my eyes. "It's private, darling. You know how it is with artists." That smile should have reassured me, but instead it unsettled me. Something about the way she delivered it, smooth, practiced, almost condescending, left me restless. Soon I noticed her phone glued to her hand. Messages deleted before I could glance at them. Her laughter drifting from another room, cut short when I entered. The bed grew colder. The warmth between us dimmed like a dying fire. Then came the letters. The first one appeared under the front door on a windy night in December. I bent down, thinking it was junk mail, but when I opened it, the handwriting was Rachel's. "I know what you saw, don't try to stop me." I froze. My chest tightened as if the walls of the townhouse were pressing in. I confronted her immediately. "Rachel, what the hell is this?" I shoved the paper in front of her. She scanned it calmly, almost amused. "Eric, are you all right? That's not mine. Maybe you're overtired." Her composure was terrifying. I stared at her, searching for cracks, but she only tilted her head with that same smile. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But that night I lay awake, the note burning in my mind, listening to every creak in the house, every gust of wind, convinced someone was moving in the hallways. That was when the fog settled not just outside, but inside me. Paranoia has a rhythm. It doesn't crash in like thunder. It seeps in like a draft through old windows. It started with footsteps. I'd hear them in the hallway when Rachel claimed she was at her classes. Slow, deliberate, like someone testing the creak of each wooden board. I'd rush out, but the hall would be empty. The door always locked, or so I thought. Then, doors I was sure I had locked appeared slightly ajar. The bathroom window open in the morning when I hadn't touched it. Once, I found muddy footprints leading from the entry to the kitchen. Rachel brushed it off. "Probably Sophie from next door, she always tracks mud." But Sophie was 6 and those footprints were larger than mine. I tried to confide in friends. Over a pint at a pub, I told Alan, my closest friend, "Rachel's hiding something. There are notes, things happening in the house." Alan shook his head. "Eric, you've been under stress. That project nearly killed you. Maybe you need rest." That was the worst part. No one believed me. To everyone else, Rachel was radiant, charming, reliable. And me? I looked like a man cracking at the edges. Then came the second letter. "You can't protect her, they'll believe me, not you." I found it on my pillow. Rachel had been out late again. I waited for her return, the note clutched in my fist. "Where are these coming from?" I demanded as she walked in, cheeks flushed from the cold or from something else. She read it, lips curling into the faintest smirk. "Eric, you're scaring me. You're imagining things." "Don't gaslight me," I snapped. My voice trembled. She stepped closer, placed her hand on my cheek. "You're fragile, Eric. Too fragile. That's why I don't tell you everything. You can't handle it." Her words cut deeper than any note. Fragile. Like a diagnosis. I began questioning myself. Were the footsteps real? The letters? Or was I losing my mind? That was the trap she set. The more I fought, the more insane I looked. One icy evening, I decided I couldn't rely on shadows anymore. I had to know the truth. I followed her. Rachel left the house bundled in her red scarf, walking briskly through the fog toward the bus stop. I trailed at a distance, heart hammering, my breath clouding the air. She rode across the city to a wealthy neighborhood, the kind with tall Georgian buildings and wrought iron gates. I watched as she approached a well-kept apartment. A man opened the door, older, confident, with an air of authority. She smiled, kissed his cheek, and walked inside. My stomach dropped. An affair. It had to be. I wanted to storm in, to drag her out, to scream. But I stayed rooted to the pavement, freezing, my hands shaking inside my coat pockets. I returned home numb. Hours later, Rachel walked in, hair slightly tousled, cheeks glowing. "How was class?" I asked. She smiled, kissed my forehead. "Productive. You worry too much." But the truth came out days later in the cruelest way. That man wasn't her lover. He was a psychiatrist. Rachel had orchestrated the entire thing. The texts, the notes, the late-night walks, all designed to make me appear paranoid. To our friends, to colleagues, to anyone who might intervene, I was becoming the unstable husband unraveling under pressure. And she was the loyal, suffering wife. The realization hollowed me. It wasn't just betrayal. It was warfare. The weeks that followed were hell. Notes continued to appear. I'd hear whispers in empty rooms, find the windows cracked open. My sleep vanished. At work, my hands trembled over blueprints and clients noticed. Every confrontation with Rachel ended the same. "Why are you doing this?" I begged one night, fists clenched. She tilted her head, eyes calm. "Doing what, Eric? You sound unwell." "This isn't love," I said, voice breaking. "Love?" She laughed quietly. "I'm teaching you reality. You've lived in your perfect little world too long." Her cruelty was subtle, meticulous. She didn't scream. She didn't strike. She just erased me piece by piece until I doubted every step I took. But one night I caught her. I came home early. The living room light was on. Rachel sat with the man from the apartment. My heart thundered. "Stop lying," I shouted. "I know the truth." Rachel looked at me with pity. "Eric, you're sick." The man cleared his throat. "Mr. Lawson, I'm a psychiatrist. Your wife brought me in because she's concerned about your mental health." I laughed bitterly. "Concerned? She's been staging all of this." Rachel shook her head sadly. "You see? Delusions." For a moment, I thought I'd lost everything. But I kept my phone in my pocket, recording the entire exchange. Her slip-ups, his presence, her manipulation, it was all there. That was the first night I realized survival meant more than defending myself. It meant documenting every move, building my own case brick by brick like the walls I'd designed my whole life. Rachel left weeks later, suitcase in hand, no goodbye beyond. I need time to rethink this marriage. Time, I knew, meant she had lost control of the narrative. My recordings gave me leverage, enough to threaten legal action, enough to stop her from turning everyone against me completely. She disappeared into the city's fog, and I was left with silence. The townhouse no longer felt like home. Every creak reminded me of deception. Every shadow looked like a trap. I learned to live cautiously, triple-checking locks, scanning rooms, questioning every interaction. Friends slowly returned when they realized I wasn't insane. But something inside me had shifted permanently. Betrayal doesn't always come in the form of passion or violence. Sometimes it arrives as meticulous, calculated cruelty, wrapped in the smile of someone you loved. Years later, I rebuilt my life. I worked again, found moments of peace, even laughter. But the scars remained. Trust became a rare currency, one I offered sparingly. And when I walked Edinburgh's narrow lanes on foggy nights, I couldn't shake the feeling that behind every window someone else might be staging their own performance of love and betrayal, ready to make their partner question their very sanity. I was 26, living in Columbus, Ohio, and I thought I had finally healed enough to try dating again. My last relationship had been a 3-year disaster with someone I once trusted deeply, until I found out he'd cheated on me with my best friend. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it fractured my sense of judgment. I spent months hiding in my apartment with my roommate and closest friend, Kara, who had been relentless in her nagging. "Get out there," she'd say, arms crossed, eyebrows raised. "You're not getting younger, and you deserve better than Netflix and frozen pizza." Against my better judgment, I downloaded True Match. One late Saturday night. I wasn't looking for love, I told myself that. But maybe a little validation wouldn't hurt. That's when I saw Daniel Harper. His profile made him seem safe. He had photos of hiking trips in Colorado, smiling with a golden retriever, even holding a baby niece in one picture. There was something calm, dependable about him. Not the kind of guy who sent crude, shallow messages like the rest. When he messaged me, I nearly laughed at how considerate his words were. "I'd rather ask about your favorite childhood memory than your favorite drink." We spent 2 weeks talking before we met in person. Kara was skeptical, giving me that look she always did when she didn't trust someone, but I brushed her off. I wanted normalcy, and Daniel felt like that. Our first date was at a quiet downtown cafe. He showed up in a crisp shirt and jeans, smiling genuinely, not overdoing it. He listened as much as he spoke, asked thoughtful questions about my job and marketing, my family, my hobbies. He even remembered little things I mentioned casually, like my obsession with 80s movie soundtracks. When he walked me to my car afterward, he said softly, "I'm glad I met you. I think this could be something real." For the first time in years, I believed it. I went home grinning like a fool. The first 3 months were idyllic. He brought flowers for no reason, cooked me pasta in his apartment while jazz played softly in the background. Once he even showed up at my office with a homemade lunch, charming my coworkers effortlessly. Kara warned me that it was too perfect, but I dismissed it. I wanted to believe in someone again. When Daniel met my parents at Sunday dinner, my mom whispered to me, "Don't let this one go." He was charming, polite, and the kind of man I thought I could build a life with. Then the cracks appeared. If I didn't reply to a text immediately, I'd get follow-ups. Busy? Or ignoring me? He began to monitor my interactions with other men, joking, or maybe not, about co-workers I laughed with. When I tried to reassure him, he sulked until I apologized, guilt dripping from my voice. By month 5, his neediness escalated. He wanted to spend every night together. If I chose to stay in with Kara, he guilt-tripped me. "I just don't understand why you'd rather watch movies with her than be with your boyfriend." I suggested slowing down. He went cold, voice cracking. "If you're already thinking of leaving, just say it. I've been cheated on before. I can't go through that again." I stayed, even when a small, nagging voice in my head told me this wasn't healthy. One evening, I found his phone on the counter while he showered. A notification popped up from an Instagram account I didn't recognize. The message preview read, "She doesn't deserve you. I'd treat you better." When I asked him about it, he laughed nervously. "Just a troll," he said. But later I realized the account's profile picture was a cropped photo of me. Things escalated quickly. Daniel made fake Facebook accounts to message Kara, accusing her of sabotaging our relationship. He emailed my boss from a burner account, implying inappropriate conduct at work. Fortunately, my boss didn't believe it, but the humiliation lingered. Every confrontation ended the same way: tears, confessions of love, and my reassurance. He became both the tormentor and the victim in his own narrative. The breaking point came on a rainy Friday night. Daniel picked me up, silent the whole ride. At the restaurant, he stared at me without speaking, tapping his fingers on the table. Finally, he leaned forward, voice low. "I know you're planning to leave me. Don't lie." I froze. "Daniel, I'm not..." He slammed his hand down, rattling the glasses. In the car, he reached into his pocket and dropped a folded white handkerchief onto my lap. A small scalpel slipped out. "See this? I'd never hurt you. Unless you made me." That night, I locked myself in my room. Kara stayed with me as I sobbed. The next morning, Daniel's profile was gone, his number disconnected. For weeks, I lived in terror, expecting him to show up at any moment. It's been nearly 2 years. I've moved apartments and changed jobs. I don't use dating apps anymore. Yet strange things still happen. Occasionally, I find small, unnerving reminders of him. A pressed flower, a sketch of me at my desk, or a note: "I told you this was real. D." I've never told Kara or my parents. They think I'm safe. But when I hear footsteps in the hallway late at night, I wonder if Daniel is still out there, patient, waiting for the moment he can re-enter my life. The shadow of obsession is heavier than I ever imagined, and it doesn't leave easily. Trust and love are delicate. Obsession can masquerade as charm and affection, slowly eroding boundaries until fear replaces safety. It's vital to recognize controlling behavior early, honor personal boundaries, and prioritize your safety. True love nurtures freedom. Obsession seeks control. They say you never forget the moment you meet someone who changes your life forever. I guess that's true. What they don't tell you is that forever doesn't always mean in the way you dream about. It was October 2014, Phoenix, Arizona. I was 25, buried in the monotony of my cubicle job at a logistics company, surrounded by fluorescent lights and gray fabric walls. Most days I counted the hours until quitting time. But one afternoon, needing a caffeine jolt, I ducked into a Starbucks around the corner. That's where I saw him, Evan Hartley. He sat at the counter with a MacBook, sketchpad open, wearing a faded denim jacket like he'd stepped out of an indie film. He looked up as I ordered my usual sugar-laden latte, smirking. "That's not coffee," he teased. "That's syrup with a splash of caffeine." I laughed, half annoyed, but mostly charmed. Well, it gets me through 8 hours of spreadsheets. Don't judge. And just like that, we started talking. Evan was a freelance graphic designer drifting from project to project, working out of coffee shops. He had an easy laugh, the kind that filled a room. We exchanged numbers, and within days I found myself waiting for his texts. Within weeks we were inseparable. The first year was golden, truly golden. Evan was everything my life wasn't: spontaneous, creative, exciting. He'd show up with sunflowers from a roadside stand, whisk me off on late-night drives into the desert just to look at the stars, sketch me on napkins like I was his muse. My parents liked him, my friends adored him, and I felt like I'd stepped into the kind of romance I thought only existed in movies. But little cracks showed even then. He hated when I worked late. He'd hover if my phone buzzed, eyes narrowing as if I had something to hide. At a friend's birthday dinner, he accused me of flirting with the waiter because I laughed at his joke. I brushed it off as insecurity. Everybody has flaws, right? Love means accepting them. By 2016, we moved into a small downtown apartment. That's when the arguments really began, about money, my family, my job. And that's when I started learning what forever with Evan might really mean. Moving in together should have been a milestone. For us, it felt like the start of a slow unraveling. Evan's freelance work dried up. leaving me to cover most of the bills. My dad, trying to help, offered to pitch in with rent, but when I mentioned it, Evan's face twisted. "So your dad thinks I can't provide for you? That I'm some loser mooching off his daughter?" "Evan, that's not what he meant. Don't defend him." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. He hated when my brother stopped by unannounced. He bristled when I texted with Megan, a coworker who often messaged me late about projects. One night, Megan's name popped up on my screen. Evan snatched the phone from my hand, glaring. "You're screwing her, aren't you?" I laughed nervously. "Megan is married, with 2 kids." His glare didn't waver. "Don't play me for a fool." The tension simmered. Every day felt like walking on glass, waiting for something to crack. But then, in the spring of 2017, he proposed. It was sunset at South Mountain Park. He knelt with a modest ring, tears in his eyes. "I can't lose you, Maddie. Be my wife." And I said yes. Not because I was sure, but because part of me hoped marriage would fix him, would fix us. For a while, it seemed to work. He called me his future wife proudly. He got along better with my parents, smiled more, drank less. But the closer the wedding came, the darker things grew. When my dad suggested a prenup, not to insult Evan, just to protect both of us, Evan exploded. "So your family thinks I'm a gold digger? That's disgusting," he screamed. He vanished for 2 days, then reappeared drunk at my door, crying, and I forgave him. Again. I didn't know then that forgiveness was exactly what he was counting on. The cheating started quietly. Evan worked late nights or went to client meetings. I wanted to believe him. But little things didn't add up. Receipts for lingerie I never received. The faint smell of perfume on his hoodie. A stranger's hair in the passenger seat of his car. One night, curiosity, or maybe desperation, got the better of me. I opened his laptop. The messages were undeniable. Conversations with at least 3 different women. One was our neighbor. Another was a babysitter he'd helped drive home. My stomach dropped. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He shrugged like it was no big deal. "They mean nothing. You're the one I'm marrying." I hurled the ring at him, my hands shaking. "We're done, Evan." That's when his face changed. The charm vanished. What I saw instead was cold, calculating fury. "You think you can leave me?" he whispered. "You think it's that easy?" That was the moment I realized leaving Evan wasn't going to be simple. It wasn't going to be safe. Evan refused to move out. He insisted his name was on the lease, that he had every right to stay. I started crashing at friends' places, avoiding home when I could. But Evan was everywhere. He locked me out of my own bedroom. He read my emails. He followed me to work, parked outside like a shadow I couldn't shake. When I blocked his number, he made fake accounts. He created a Facebook profile using my photos, posting humiliating captions. "Looking for men since my fiancé can't satisfy me." At night, I heard footsteps in the hall. Once, I peered through the peephole at 2 a.m. and saw him standing there with flowers whispering, "We're still getting married, babe, you just don't know it yet." The worst came in August 2017. I walked into my apartment and smelled cigarette smoke. On the kitchen table sat a wedding cake topper, bride and groom figurines. The bride's head was broken off. My stomach turned. Before I could run, Evan stepped out of my bedroom grinning. "I've been waiting for you." I bolted, pounding on a neighbor's door until they let me in. Evan banged on the hallway walls, shouting promises and threats. "If you marry someone else, I'll kill him. You're mine forever." Police came. They found a spare key in his pocket, and later, a hidden camera in my smoke detector. Evan was charged with harassment, trespassing, unlawful surveillance. He served 9 months. 9 months. And then he vanished from Phoenix. I thought it was over. For years, I built my life back brick by brick. Therapy, long phone calls with my mom, new friends, a better job. But the fear lingered. Every knock on the door made my pulse spike. Every blocked number felt like a ghost. In 2022, I was scrolling LinkedIn after work. A notification popped up. Your profile was viewed. I clicked. The account had no photo, no work history, just 2 initials. EH. My blood ran cold. Years had passed. States separated us. He had no reason to know where I was. But I knew, deep down, Evan Hartley wasn't finished with me. Maybe he never would be. Love should never come with conditions of fear, control, or possession. What starts as small criticisms, jealous stares, or insecurities can grow into suffocating abuse. It's easy to excuse red flags when you're blinded by affection, but ignoring them can cost more than heartbreak. It can cost your freedom, your safety, even your life. Real love makes you feel safe. Anything else isn't love, it's control. And the sooner you see that, the sooner you can protect yourself. I was 27 when I left Derek and moved to Riverside, California. Derek was the safe choice. A finance guy with neatly pressed shirts, a reliable 9-to-5, and parents who adored him. For 3 years we had a life on rails, comfortable, predictable, and suffocating. The thought of a suburban house, a mortgage, kids by 30, and the endless grind made me feel trapped. One night, sitting across from him at our favorite Italian spot, listening to him drone about interest rates and tax brackets, I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I told him it was over. He cried. His family called me selfish. I told myself I was chasing freedom, chasing the unknown, chasing life that felt raw and untamed. Freedom came with a price. Loneliness. For months I filled the void with long walks along the river, Netflix binges, and wine that tasted like emptiness. Then, on a particularly lonely Saturday night, I downloaded Tinder. I wasn't looking for love. At least, that's what I told myself. I wanted excitement, a jolt, something that would make me feel alive again. I wanted the thrill of danger, the kind you get from fleeting affairs, whispered secrets, and stolen moments. That's when I met Nathan Crawford. His profile was minimalistic. A photo in a sharp suit standing beside a black Mercedes, and a bio that read, "Work hard, play harder, not serious." I almost swiped left until he messaged me. "Red is your color." I blinked. A picture of me in a red cocktail dress flashed in my mind. His words were simple but calculated, different from the generic lazy lines I'd been getting from others. There was confidence in them, ownership, something dangerous. Our first date was at Oakwood Grill, a dimly lit upscale spot. Saturday night, 8:30. Nathan was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore his receding hairline with bold confidence. He smelled of cologne that lingered on your skin long after someone left a room. When I arrived, his eyes lit up as if I'd just walked into his life and completed the picture. Pictures don't do you justice. We ate steak and lobster, drank champagne he ordered without asking. The way he leaned in, hand brushing mine lightly, voice low and commanding, made me dizzy. Not from the wine, but from the power he seemed to exert over me effortlessly. By dessert, I realized I was hooked. It didn't take long for the affair to escalate. Weekend getaways to Palm Springs, hotel rooms with soft lights and whispered promises, and gifts I never asked for but secretly cherished. Midnight phone calls where he confessed his life with his wife, Monica, felt empty and gray compared to the vibrancy he claimed to feel with me. I tried to convince myself I wasn't falling. Yet when his texts came, I dropped everything. But shadows were already creeping in. At first, Nathan's intensity was intoxicating. He made me feel special in a way that was addictive. But soon it became controlling. If I didn't respond immediately to a text, a second one appeared. Too busy for me now? He hated my Instagram photos. What if someone recognizes you? Are you trying to get caught? And if I mentioned seeing another guy casually, his face would darken instantly. You don't do that. You're mine. I laughed it off at first. It was an affair. It was supposed to be temporary, exciting, illicit. But he wanted more. He wanted to own me. I found myself walking on eggshells, anxious over my every message, every social media post, every word I spoke about anyone else. Melissa, my sister and closest friend, found out early on. She called me screaming one night after spotting texts and missed calls from Nathan on my phone. "You're going to get yourself hurt. He's married, Alyssa. Do you think he's going to leave his wife? He'll chew you up and spit you out." I told her she didn't understand. He was different. He made me feel alive again, made me laugh, made me feel like someone noticed me in a way no one ever had. I clung to that feeling even as I began noticing the warning signs I had ignored. Then came March 2021. Nathan had promised to meet me again at the Oakwood Grill. I arrived early, sitting nervously in a corner booth, fidgeting with my phone. When he finally showed up, he was late, sweating slightly, his eyes darting around the room. Tension hummed in the air like static electricity. Dinner began uneventfully, then a sharp voice cut across the restaurant. "Nathan, you bastard." The world froze. All conversations, all clinking of glasses, all the background hum of music seemed to vanish. At the entrance stood Monica, Nathan's wife. Tall, raven-haired and piercing, with emerald eyes that could cut through steel. Her hand slammed down on her purse, spilling its contents, and she glared at me. "You think I wouldn't find out? Wasting my money on this little slut?" My stomach flipped. Nathan stumbled over excuses, muttered apologies, but she wasn't hearing any of it. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, turned to me. "Do you have any idea what kind of man you're dealing with, do you?" Her words were more than anger, they were a warning. And in that moment, I realized just how reckless I had been. Nathan whisked me out before things escalated further. In the parking lot, he grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "Listen to me. Monica doesn't matter. She'll never leave me. But you're not going anywhere." His voice was calm, chillingly calm. Fear wrapped around me like ice. After that night, things spiraled. Nathan began showing up at my apartment unannounced. He sent gifts, perfume, lingerie, flowers, each more extravagant than the last. It was as though he wanted the neighbors to notice, to witness his possession of me. Each package carried a threat disguised as affection. When I tried to break it off, he sent a message that froze me to my core. "If you walk away, I'll make sure no one ever touches you again. Ever." I blocked him. He found new numbers. He found new accounts. One night, Melissa called me, sobbing. Someone had sent her screenshots of my texts with Nathan, paired with threats about ruining her reputation if I didn't comply. I knew who it was. My affair was no longer just an affair. It had turned into an obsession, and I was trapped in its orbit. I started double-checking locks, looking out the windows before opening the door, walking the long way to my car, carrying keys in both hands. The anxiety was constant, like a shadow that never left. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. I was walking to my car in the dimly lit apartment parking lot, tired from work and trying to ignore the paranoia gnawing at me. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Nathan. His smile was wrong, too wide, too calm, almost predatory. He pressed something into my hand. A photo. I froze. It was me, sleeping, in my bed. "See? You're already mine. Don't fight it." The words weren't loud, but they echoed through my entire being. I realized then that I wasn't just a casual fling or a mistake. I was a possession in his eyes, and he would not let go. I moved a month later, changed apartments, changed jobs, cut my hair, deleted social media. I thought I was safe. But sometimes, when I check the front door in the morning, a single red flower lies there. No note, no card, just the reminder that Nathan hasn't let me go. That the danger, the obsession, the fear lingers. And I know in my gut that it always will. Desire without boundaries can be dangerous. The thrill of obsession may feel exciting, but it can quickly turn into fear and control. Protect yourself. Recognize warning signs early, And never compromise your safety or your sense of autonomy for the sake of desire. True intimacy is built on trust and respect, not control. Grief has a way of folding time in on itself. Some mornings in Pinehurst, Vermont, I'd wake and expect Luke to be outside honking the horn of his old Honda Civic, calling me lazy for sleeping in when we had basketball practice. But it was spring 2010 now, and Luke was gone. And no matter how hard I tried to keep moving, every street, every corner of our quiet town seemed to carry his ghost. Luke and I had been inseparable since we were kids. I was the cautious one, the guy who always double-checked his homework and played it safe on the field. Luke was everything I wasn't. Reckless, daring, a natural leader with the kind of grin that made you follow him even when you knew better. We balanced each other out. He'd push me into risks and I'd pull him back before things went too far. That was the rhythm of our friendship, until the rhythm stopped on a rainy night the previous November when Luke's car skidded off the road and hit a tree. The official story was simple. He'd been speeding, maybe distracted. No one else was hurt, but I couldn't shake the weight pressing down on me. That night, Luke and I had fought. I'd been drinking at a friend's house, and I remembered, hazy but sharp in flashes, the argument we had over the phone. I remembered him picking me up, me slurring words, the two of us shouting, headlights cutting through rain. Then the next thing I knew, I was waking up at home with no memory of how I got there, and Luke was dead. For months, I carried the secret like a stone in my chest. Everyone said Luke had been alone in the car, but my brain kept replaying a different version, me behind the wheel, drunk, too slow to react. I told myself I couldn't confess, couldn't crush his parents with that truth. So I buried it, or tried to. By March, life had started to inch forward. I worked shifts at the hardware store, went through the motions of senior year, smiled when people expected it. But the nights were the worst. The nights were when the phone rang. The first time, I thought it was a wrong number. My phone buzzed at 1:07 a.m., screen lighting up with a name that froze my blood. Luke. His number had been disconnected months ago. Hands shaking, I answered, but only static filled the line. I hung up, convinced it was some cruel prank, maybe one of our buddies trying to spook me. But the calls didn't stop. Night after night, the phone would ring at impossible hours, and sometimes there was a voice, soft, low, and achingly familiar. "You have to tell the truth," it said. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. My heart hammered in my chest. I told myself it was stress, grief, maybe even hallucinations. But when I picked up the phone again, the voicemail waited. And it wasn't just words. It was Luke. His voice, his cadence, even the way he said my name. I couldn't breathe. At first I tried to laugh it off. I told myself it had to be one of our friends pulling strings, splicing old recordings. Luke and I had spent hours on video games, late-night calls, joking about girls, life, whatever. There was plenty of material someone could use. But the messages didn't sound like recycled jokes, they were intimate. Specific. One night, I pressed play and heard, "Remember the fishing trip? You threw up on my shoes, man. I never let you live it down." No one else had known about that. We'd promised not to tell a soul. My stomach dropped. Another message came a week later, the voice cracking with emotion. "You weren't supposed to drive. You weren't supposed to." I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, replaying every moment of the crash in my head. Did I drive? Was I lying to myself? My mind kept fracturing the memory like a broken mirror. Some pieces showed Luke alone, others showed me behind the wheel. School suffered. My teachers pulled me aside asking if I was okay. At the hardware store, I mixed up orders, dropped boxes, once nearly knocked over a ladder with a customer on it. My mom asked if I was still grieving. I lied and said I was fine. But the phone calls never stopped. Always late, always with that same voice. Sometimes pleading, sometimes accusing. You have to tell the truth, Darren. You owe me. The guilt hollowed me out. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without seeing blood on my hands. Finally, one cold evening in early April, I drove to Luke's house. His parents answered the door, faces worn with grief that mirrored my own. I sat at their kitchen table, hands trembling, and confessed. "I think it was my fault," I whispered. That night, I was drunk. I think I drove. Their silence was a knife. His mom's eyes filled with tears, and his dad shook his head slowly. "Darren, you weren't in the car," his dad said. "Luke was alone. We know that. The police know that." Confusion and relief and terror crashed through me all at once. "No, that can't be. I remember." "You're grieving," his mom said gently. "Your memory's playing tricks on you. Don't punish yourself like this." But the phone calls didn't care about police reports or grieving parents. They grew sharper, clearer. Luke's voice haunting me, demanding, accusing. And I started to wonder if maybe I wasn't imagining after all. Sleep became a stranger. I'd sit in my room at night waiting for the phone to ring, dreading it but unable to resist. When it buzzed, I'd answer on the first ring, desperate to hear his voice even as it destroyed me. One night, the voice said, "Why'd you let me drive alone? Why didn't you stop me?" I shouted into the phone, "I tried. I told you not to go, But the line went dead. The next day I walked the crash site, a stretch of road slick with spring rain. I stood by the tree that had ended his life, my shoes sinking into mud, and tried to remember. The night replayed in fragments, the argument, the headlights. Luke's face twisted in frustration. But the harder I tried, the less I trusted what I saw. Had I imagined being in the car? Had my guilt twisted memory into something unbearable? I started carrying the phone everywhere, even in the shower, terrified I'd miss a call. My mom noticed the bags under my eyes, the way I jumped at every sound. "You're scaring me," she said one morning, her hand brushing my cheek. "I'm fine," I lied. But I wasn't fine. I was unraveling. Then one night, I played back a voicemail I'd ignored in class earlier. Luke's voice was steady this time, less pleading, more resigned. "You keep forgetting, Darren. You weren't there, but you know who was." The line went dead, and I stared at the phone until my vision blurred. Someone else? Who? I ransacked my memory, pulling apart every detail of that night. Luke had fought with me, yes. But hadn't he also fought with someone else at the party? Someone whose face I couldn't quite place? The guilt that had consumed me began to warp into something else. Fear. By late April, the phone calls stopped being random. They felt deliberate, timed, as if Luke, or whatever was left of him, was guiding me. One night I got a call just past midnight. The message was longer this time, words spilling out with urgency. "Check the glove box, Darren. I left it there. You'll see the truth." I froze. The car had been towed months ago, wrecked beyond repair, but something about the message rang true. The next day I tracked down the impound lot, begged the manager to let me see what was left of Luke's Civic. The man eyed me warily, but eventually agreed. The car was a twisted shell, glass shattered, metal bent. My chest tightened at the sight, but I pushed forward. The glove box hung half open. Inside, buried under registration papers, was a small tape recorder. My hands shook as I lifted it, pressing play. Static filled the air, then Luke's voice emerged. Not a ghost this time, not a phantom call. A real recording. "If something happens to me, it won't be an accident. It's Mason. He's been threatening me since the party. Said he'd make me regret humiliating him. If I die, tell the truth." My legs gave out and I sat hard on the ground. Mason. A name I hadn't thought about in months. He'd been at the party that night, drunk, angry after losing a fight with Luke. The phone calls weren't hallucinations. They were breadcrumbs leading me to the recording. Luke hadn't been haunting me out of malice. He'd been begging me to clear the fog, to remember. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the recorder to my chest. Confronting Mason wasn't cinematic. It wasn't a showdown or a confession under pressure. It was me, sitting across from him at a diner, tape recorder between us, my heart pounding. He went pale the moment I pressed play. The voice of the dead filled the booth, words spilling into the air like judgment. Mason stammered, tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. I didn't need him to confess to me. I needed the truth out, and I took it straight to the police. The investigation that followed was messy, painful. Mason had chased Luke that night, run him off the road after a heated confrontation. My guilt had twisted the memory into something else, something easier to believe. That I was the villain, that my carelessness had cost my best friend his life. It had been easier to punish myself than face the darkness in someone else. When the case closed and Mason was taken away, I stood again at Luke's crash site. The tree loomed tall, scarred from the impact, a silent witness to the truth I'd almost buried forever. The phone never rang again. Grief can distort memory, bending it until lies feel like truth. Guilt can blind us, convincing us to carry burdens that aren't ours to bear. But the truth, no matter how painful, is lighter than the weight of false responsibility. Love and loss demand honesty, with others and with ourselves. When we listen closely, even through the noise of grief, the truth finds a way to speak. I used to think life in Brookfield, Minnesota was as predictable as the seasons. Summers were sticky and filled with mosquitoes, falls were crisp and quiet, winters dragged on forever, and spring always felt like a half-hearted apology for all the snow. Nothing ever really changed here. People grew up, worked steady jobs, raised families, and lived in the same neighborhoods their parents had. I was 16 in the fall of 2021, and like most kids my age, I felt invisible. I wasn't a cheerleader, didn't date football players, and wasn't the kind of girl who got noticed in the hallways. My hair was always in a ponytail, my jeans usually a little faded, and my sneakers scuffed from too many shifts at the coffee shop where I worked part-time. If I didn't have my best friend Kayla, I don't know if anyone at Brookfield High would have remembered I existed. Kayla was my opposite in almost every way, outgoing, loud, and always with some boy texting her. She was the one who told me, "Brooke, you've got to live a little. Download one of those apps. Meet someone. You're not going to find your soulmate waiting tables at the coffee shop." I laughed it off for weeks, but one night when I was lying in bed scrolling through TikTok while my mom worked her overnight shift at the hospital, and my dad was already asleep, the silence of the house got to me. I opened the app store, typed in dating, and downloaded TrueMatch. Most of the guys who messaged me were older or creepy. Their profiles screamed, "Run." But then there was Tyler Reeves, 17, lived in Fairhaven, just one town over, and his profile picture showed him with a golden retriever and a beat-up Honda Civic. He had an easy smile, one that looked real, not like he was trying too hard. His bio said, "Just looking for someone real. Tired of games." His first message hit me in a way none of the others did. "You have kind eyes. Most people don't notice small things like that. I do." No one had ever said anything like that to me before. I stared at the screen for a long time, rereading it, before I typed back, "Thanks, that's nice." That was the beginning. Tyler wasn't like the other guys. He asked about my favorite books, about Cooper, our old family dog, and about my dream of studying veterinary medicine one day. He remembered the details too. When I said my mom was working nights, he'd ask the next day how she was holding up. When I mentioned Kayla by name, he remembered who she was. "You're different," I told him once. "So are you," he wrote back. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. For weeks, Tyler and I messaged every day. He wasn't pushy. He didn't send weird photos or pressure me to meet up right away. When he asked about school, he didn't roll his eyes when I talked about AP biology. He told me he liked that I cared about something. The first time we met in person was by accident, or at least that's how it felt. One rainy night in late September, my ride home from the coffee shop bailed. I stood under the awning, rain soaking through my sneakers, when Tyler texted, Need a ride? I'm nearby. I hesitated, my mom's voice echoing in my head about never getting into cars with boys you meet online. But when a silver Honda Civic pulled up, headlights cutting through the rain, and Tyler leaned over with a shy smile, holding out an umbrella, I got in. We drove to a diner parking lot, split a pair of milkshakes, and listened to music with the windows fogging up. He never touched me, not even a hand on mine. He just laughed when I told a dumb story about spilling coffee on a customer that morning. I think he's the nicest guy I've ever met, I told Kayla the next day. But little things started to bother me. Tyler would ask who I was texting. If I didn't reply to him right away, he sent messages like, "So I guess I don't matter. Bet you're talking to some football guy." When I told him I was doing homework, he'd reply, "Homework doesn't take 45 minutes to text back, don't lie." I laughed it off. He was just insecure, right? He liked me too much, that's all. But his intensity grew. The first real crack in the fantasy came at a house party. Kayla dragged me there on a Friday night, promising it'd be a girls' night. Tyler offered to drive us, but I said no. We needed a break from boys. Halfway through the night, my phone buzzed. 27 missed messages from Tyler. "Where are you? Who are you with? Send me a picture right now. Answer me or I'm coming there." My chest tightened. I turned my phone off, trying to enjoy the music, the chatter, the laughter. But the feeling of dread stayed with me. When Kayla and I left, her friend whispered that Tyler had been bragging in the kitchen earlier, bragging that he had pictures of me sleeping. My heart stopped. "How could he?" I whispered. "He said you sleep with your blinds open. He likes to watch." That night I texted him furiously. "What the hell did you say at that party?" He replied instantly. "I wasn't bragging. I was just telling the truth. I like watching you. You look peaceful. Don't freak out. I just wanted to feel close to you." I blocked his number that night. But that wasn't the end. At 2 a.m, I woke to a faint tapping on my window. I pulled back the curtain and saw Tyler standing in the yard, hands shoved into his hoodie pocket, staring up at me. I screamed. Dad ran outside, but Tyler was gone. The weeks that followed were a blur of fear. Tyler made fake Instagram accounts to message me. "You can't block love." He called from random numbers, pretending to be classmates. "You think you're too good for me?" He even messaged Kayla, "She's mine, stay away." My parents called the police, but because Tyler was a minor and hadn't physically hurt me, they shrugged. "Keep an eye out," they said. The breaking point came on October 12th. I had just finished my shift at the coffee shop. The parking lot was dark, nearly empty. On the hood of my car sat a small gift bag. Inside was my favorite brand of lip gloss, a photo of me at the bus stop, taken that morning, and a note. "Don't ignore me. I'll wait as long as it takes. T." My stomach dropped. I left the bag on the pavement and drove home, tears blurring the road. That night I woke to the sound of glass shattering. Tyler was inside. I froze in my doorway as I saw him in the kitchen, a knife clutched in his hand, his face pale and wild. "Why won't you just listen to me?" he shouted. "We're supposed to be together. I can't let you ruin this." My dad barreled into the room, shouting for him to drop it. Tyler lunged forward but slipped on the broken glass, cutting his hand. I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 as my dad wrestled him to the ground. By the time the police arrived, Tyler was screaming my name as they dragged him away. "You'll regret this, Brooke. You'll regret it." He was charged with breaking and entering, stalking, and assault with a deadly weapon. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in juvenile detention. 3 years have passed since then, and I still double-check the locks every night. I keep my blinds shut tight, even on the sunniest days. And sometimes when I open a new social media account, I get the same follow request. No profile picture, no posts, just the name. TR. Forever. Love isn't obsession. Attention isn't affection. Real relationships are built on respect, trust, and freedom, not control, fear, or manipulation. I learned the hard way that danger doesn't always wear a mask or hide in the shadows. Sometimes it smiles at you through a screen, remembers the little things and makes you feel special, until it twists into something terrifying. Don't ignore the red flags. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Protect your boundaries. And remember, you are never invisible, but you are never obligated to someone else's idea of love. When my parents told me we were leaving the city for Willow Creek, I thought they were joking. The name alone sounded like something from an old ghost story. But it was real. A small, forested town in Washington with a single main street, 2 diners, and a library that smelled of cedar. We moved there in June of 2021, and I hated almost everything about it. The air felt too still, the nights too dark, the woods too close. At 17, I wasn't great at starting over. Friends came slowly to me, and after years in crowded classrooms and buzzing neighborhoods, Willow Creek felt like stepping into silence. The one exception was Elise Carver. She lived at the edge of town, in a sprawling, century-old house that seemed to breathe with its own life. Creaking floors, a stone fireplace that swallowed whole logs, and a backyard that sloped into a wall of pines. Elise was everything I wasn't: bold, funny, unafraid of being herself. She became my anchor in a place where I otherwise drifted. That summer, our friendship became a constant rhythm. She teased me for being cautious, and I grounded her when she pushed limits. She was the kind of girl who suggested jumping into lakes at midnight or hiking trails with only a phone flashlight. I was the one who asked if we should maybe bring bug spray or at least tell someone where we were going. We worked because we were different. When she invited me for a weekend sleepover, I didn't hesitate. My parents, buried in their work schedules, were just relieved I had a friend. We had plans for the weekend: movies, games, and documenting nature around her property for a small photography project. Elise was convinced we could capture the kind of shots her art teacher would rave about. I was more skeptical, but I didn't say no. The first night started the way most of our nights did, with snacks, jokes, and games. We settled in the attic, surrounded by boxes of old board games, forgotten photo albums, and trunks that smelled faintly of mothballs. The windows overlooked the forest, black silhouettes of trees pressing against the horizon. Elise made it feel like an adventure rather than something ominous. Around 10:30 p.m., she suggested we go for a short walk along a narrow trail at the edge of her yard. My stomach sank, but her enthusiasm was contagious. She pulled me out the door with 2 flashlights and a grin. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. Fireflies blinked lazily among the ferns, and the crunch of our shoes against the trail felt too loud. My instincts told me it was too dark, too late, but Elise was glowing with excitement. She pointed out trees like landmarks, describing where the trail eventually opened into a meadow. That was when I heard it, the rustling in the underbrush. At first I thought it was a deer, but the low growl that followed wasn't like any animal I recognized. I froze, clutching my flashlight tighter. "Relax," Elise whispered, grinning. "It's probably a raccoon." I tried to laugh, but the sound stuck in my throat. My flashlight beam jittered over the trees, catching only shadows. Then came the snapping of a branch, loud, deliberate. Elise flinched this time. We both swung our beams toward the sound, but the woods stared back in silence. Just as I exhaled, I saw it, a faint glint in the distance, like light bouncing off glass or metal. It moved slowly, too high for an animal's eyes, too steady to be chance. My pulse hammered in my ears. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Elise shook her head quickly, though I could tell she had. We turned back, quickening our pace, but the sound behind us, footsteps, subtle but distinct, mirrored every move. We reached Elise's house in record time, slamming the back door shut and locking it. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the flashlight. Elise, trying to brush it off, laughed nervously and said, "Okay, that was creepy, but it's fine, it's nothing." But I knew from the look in her eyes that she didn't believe her own words. We retreated to the attic, throwing ourselves into movies to drown the unease. The glow of the screen, the hum of the old DVD player, the crackle of popcorn. It should have been comforting. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard it, a soft tapping at the window. At first I thought it was branches shifting in the wind, but the rhythm was too precise, too intentional. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap. "Elise," I whispered, nudging her. She frowned, hitting pause on the movie. The room fell into silence, and the tapping came again. We both turned toward the window. Nothing but blackness pressed against the glass. Then, without warning, my camera, left on the floor, flashed. The burst of light startled us both, freezing the room in stark white for a second. The camera had been off, its battery nearly dead. Yet the flash repeated, again and again, as if triggered from outside. My skin prickled. "I think someone's out there," I whispered. Elise's bravado faltered. She chewed her lip, her gaze flicking to the attic door. "It's probably, I don't know, a reflection?" But neither of us believed that. The tapping grew louder, more deliberate. And with each burst of the camera, shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally across the attic walls. My chest tightened as though the air itself had grown heavy. We huddled together on the floor, listening to the sounds of the house, the ticking of pipes, the groan of wood, and beneath it all, the faint impression of movement outside. I wanted to call my parents, the police, anyone, but the thought of explaining what was happening froze me. We had no proof, just shadows and sounds, and a fear I couldn't name. "Maybe it's a prank," Elise whispered, though her voice wavered. But deep down I knew this wasn't a prank. Someone, or something, was playing a game with us. By 3 a.m, we were no longer pretending to be calm. The tapping had spread, echoing along different windows of the house, moving like footsteps circling the property. Then came the sound I'll never forget. The creak of stairs. Not outside. Inside. "Elise," I hissed, gripping her arm. We stared at the attic door as the sound drew closer. Step by step, slow, deliberate, weighted. I grabbed my flashlight, hand slick with sweat. When the sound reached the top, I flicked it on and aimed at the doorway. For a split second I caught a glimpse. A tall figure, pale, draped in a ragged jacket. It moved past the corner of the stairwell and vanished into shadow. Elise gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Did you see that?" I nodded, heart slamming against my ribs. We didn't wait. We bolted down the stairs, tripping over each other in panic. Our screams shattered the silence as we rushed into her parents' bedroom. They woke in confusion, but the terror on our faces must have said enough. Her dad grabbed a bat and checked the house, every room, every closet. He searched the yard with a flashlight, the beam cutting through the mist that hung low in the grass. Nothing. No footprints. No intruder. No explanation. Her parents tried to soothe us, insisting it must have been our imaginations, the house settling, the woods playing tricks. But I knew what I'd seen. Elise knew too. That night, I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, sunlight seemed to wash away some of the fear, but unease clung to me. Over breakfast, Elise's mom joked about horror movies and teenage imaginations, but Elise and I shared a look that said neither of us believed it. When we reviewed the photos on my camera, the truth hit harder than any words. The pictures weren't of us. They weren't random shots of the attic. They were of the figure. Frame by frame, it appeared closer. At first in the corner, a blurred shape. Then clearer, pale features, a shadowed face. And finally, too close, the figure inside the attic standing over us as we huddled on the floor. I dropped the camera, bile rising in my throat. Elise whispered, "How is that possible?" We didn't see anyone come in. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the sequence again. There was no mistaking it. Someone had been in the attic with us. We begged her parents to call the police. They humored us but didn't push hard. Without evidence beyond eerie photos, there wasn't much to investigate. Still, an officer came by, took a report, and promised to patrol the area. That afternoon, Elise's dad checked the locks, the windows, even the attic crawl spaces. Everything was secure. Too secure. And yet, the memory of that figure lingered. That night, I begged Elise not to stay in the attic again. We slept on the living room couch, lights blazing, but neither of us found rest. Every sound made us flinch. Every shadow seemed alive. I counted down the hours until daylight, wishing desperately to be anywhere but that house. Weeks later, life in Willow Creek returned to its sleepy rhythm, at least on the surface. Elise and I never went back into the woods at night. We stopped bringing up the figure, the photos, the sounds. But silence doesn't erase memory. One afternoon, while helping Elise's mom sort through boxes in the attic, I found a stack of old newspapers. Buried among them was an article that froze me in place. It was about the house, about the previous owner, a man who had vanished without a trace years ago. Last seen walking into the forest. His body was never recovered. The photo in the article was faded but familiar. A tall man in a worn jacket, pale eyes staring at the camera. I shoved the paper back into the box, my skin crawling. We never talked about it. Not directly, but from then on, Elise kept her windows locked, and I stopped walking home after dark. The woods around Willow Creek still whispered when the wind shifted, and I knew, deep down, that what we saw that night had never really left. Curiosity can push us into places where fear becomes more than imagination. That night in Willow Creek taught me that safety is fragile, and trust in instincts matters more than bravado. Shadows and sounds may be easy to dismiss, but sometimes the danger we sense is real. Listen to the unease, respect the warnings, and never ignore the voice inside that whispers when something isn't right. I turned 26 in the fall of 2019, and I thought life had me cornered in a loop of monotony. I worked as a junior software developer in downtown Seattle, where gray clouds and drizzle seemed to leak into my soul as much as into the city streets. My apartment overlooked the freeway, the constant hum of traffic a background track to my loneliness. Weeks bled together, and the apartment felt smaller every day. Microwave dinners and instant noodles were my companions. Code reviews and endless meetings were my prison. I had just ended a 3-year relationship with Maya, my coworker. She was bright, adventurous, the kind of person who made the world feel like it had colors I couldn't see. She broke it off because I wasn't spontaneous enough. I wanted stability. She wanted chaos. The breakup hit me hard. Months passed, and every attempt at distraction, weekend parties, casual drinks, even Tinder, felt hollow. It was Ethan, my longtime friend and fellow nerd, who finally shook me out of my slump. He was relentless. "Dude, you need to get off the pity train. Try something new. Meet people. You're not dead yet." I begrudgingly downloaded Match Wave, a dating app. I swiped and messaged, mostly out of boredom. Most conversations fizzled after a few exchanges. Then, one evening, Clara Jensen appeared. Her profile screamed different. Green eyes, paint flecks on her denim jacket, a messy bun, and a smile that suggested she'd seen the world in ways I hadn't. Her bio said, "I paint, I read, I love thunderstorms, looking for someone who doesn't play games." That line alone made me pause. Her first message was almost psychic. "You look like the kind of guy who secretly hates loud bars but loves deep conversations. Am I right?" I almost didn't respond because I didn't know why I trusted her immediately. But something about her energy, the way her words felt like they understood the quiet corners of my personality, made me type back. We began messaging constantly. Clara had a way of digging into the mundane details of life and making them feel significant. She asked about my coding projects, my favorite books, the tiny insecurities I kept hidden. She shared stories of painting late into the night, of feeling disconnected from the world, of chasing inspiration like it was a living thing. The first time we met in person was at a small cafe near Pike Place. Clara wore her denim jacket with flecks of paint, hair haphazardly tied back, and a nervous laugh that immediately made me relax. We sat across from each other, sipping coffee, talking about storms and art and books, laughing at nothing in particular. For the first time in months, I felt alive. For 2 months, everything was perfect. Rainy Sundays blurred into afternoons of cooking, binging shows, wandering bookstores. My coworkers noticed a change. They joked that I had a Clara glow. Life felt almost normal again. But then the cracks appeared. At first it was little things, small, almost imperceptible. If I stayed late at work, her messages turned from casual check-ins to guilt-laden texts. "Are you really staying late again? You're ignoring me." If my phone buzzed in my pocket, she asked pointedly, "Who is that?" Even a passing mention of Maya, a name from a life I thought I had buried, triggered rage. "Why are you still thinking about her? Do you want her instead of me?" I reassured her. Always. And yet reassurance was never enough. By the 4th month, Clara's jealousy escalated into control. She demanded to know about every interaction I had at work. Once she accused me of flirting with my team lead because I laughed at a joke during a meeting. She hated Ethan, claiming he was a bad influence on me. The first big violation came when I left my laptop open. Clara scrolled through my Slack messages without permission, questioning every smiley face. When I confronted her, she erupted, throwing my phone across the room, then crying until I apologized. I felt trapped. Every step I took seemed calculated to avoid setting her off. The lies started next. She told me her father was dead, only for me to later overhear her speaking to him on the phone. She claimed a part-time job at an art studio, but the owner confirmed she never worked there. When I confronted her, she screamed, sobbed, and somehow convinced me I had overreacted. It was subtle at first, the little manipulations that made me question my own judgment. She whispered, "You just don't get it. I love you so much it scares me. Don't leave me." And every time I gave in. The breaking point came one Friday evening. I went to a co-worker's birthday dinner without her, something that should have been trivial. That night my phone buzzed endlessly, 47 messages. When I returned, Clara sat on my couch, dark circles under her eyes, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "I thought you were cheating. I thought you were leaving me. She held a bottle of pills and my stomach dropped. "Relax. I didn't. But now you know how serious I am about us." 2 weeks later, I attempted to break things off. She laughed. "You don't get to leave me. I'd rather die than let you go." Soon, Ethan called me. Clara had shown up at his apartment, screaming at him to stay away from her man. The next day, HR received an email from Clara, claiming I had harassed coworkers. My boss dismissed it, but the humiliation left scars. I blocked her everywhere, changed my number, moved apartments. For a time, I thought it was over. Then, the painting appeared. I came home one night to a portrait of me, sitting asleep in my apartment rendered in perfect detail. Clara had been inside. The police took a report but explained that without direct threats, there wasn't much they could do. The following week, my new girlfriend Rachel received a fake Instagram account posting her selfies with captions threatening her. She broke up with me, shaken. Exactly what Clara wanted. Months passed. I tried to reclaim my life, but Clara's presence lingered, invisible and insidious like smoke that fills a room long after the fire is gone. The last time I saw her was March 2021. I was on the late bus home, headphones in, scrolling emails, when I saw her reflection 2 rows ahead, smiling slowly, like she had a secret I wasn't supposed to know. I ran off the bus, heart pounding, all the way home. Even now, 2 years later, I receive burner emails, photos of me walking, sitting in a cafe, unlocking my door. The subject line is always the same. Still ours. See, I've changed cities, jobs, and routines. I avoid dating apps. But I know her shadow lingers, patient and watching. The lesson I've learned is harsh. Trust is fragile, boundaries matter, and obsession can hide behind warmth and charm. Love can blind us, and vulnerability can be exploited by those with controlling or unstable behavior. It's essential to recognize the signs of manipulation and obsession early, to protect personal boundaries, and never compromise safety for the illusion of connection. Real love respects autonomy. Obsession does not.